Yo, 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 what is up, everybody? Chris here from Fake Sports News, X Rotation, however the flipping on me on these interwebs. And today I'm going to be bringing you guys a quick tier list ranking all of our teams in the Call of Duty League going into our upcoming Major 1 in beautiful Dallas, Texas. Well, I guess not so beautiful right now. It's a little bit frigid, almost like an icebox. But without further ado, let's get into the actual tier list. Hope you guys enjoyed the intro as always. You know, nothing new here. Maybe one day, as Drake says. But anyways, without getting too much into lay weeds, let's get into lay standings and lay team performances. So, let's look at the different teams. Let's see. We have the performance graphs. Of course, you guys know I am a member of the COD Stats team now, so that's where we are going to be going for our statistical insights going forward. And looking at it, one of the things I love about this website is the fact that you can actually look at the performances of each team per match, right? And you can track the form of them. So let's start. Let's just pick a... Alright, so we'll start with the Miami Heretics. We'll go in order of where the teams appear in this tier list, just with the pictures. So we'll start with the Miami Heretics. Let's rank them. Let's see how they... Let's get rid of everybody but Miami, right? And we'll see how they've been performing. So as you guys can see, their form has gone up and down. As you can see, their team KDs have, relatively speaking, been hovering around a 1. And they've exceeded a 1 most times in the matches that they've played. They've had a lot of pressure on the map, and they've lost some pretty close series, if we're being honest. So I rate this Miami team decently high, if we're being honest. I feel like their losses obviously were to very good teams, so it's a little bit hard to say. Let's actually just look at their schedule, their difficulty of schedule. Another thing I love about this website is the fact that you can sort teams based on... you can sort the schedule based on teams. So you can look at, let's say, like Miami's recent form, right? So they lost game 1 to Koi, beat them in round 11, etc., etc., got blown out on the exposure, brought it back on the den, and you can see, relatively speaking, how they performed, right? So looking at it, lost to Koi, tough loss to Koi, very close one. Also, very, very respectable loss to OpTic. They lost 6-4, beat them with an insane comeback in that den HP, if you guys remember that. And OpTic, the whole series was close, right? Same thing with C9 New York, played them pretty tight. C9 is just a very scrappy team. They always find a way to get their maps through and somehow force a game 5. Carolina, post-exceed, as we talked about in the video yesterday, is just a different beast, right? So that's what that is. Vancouver, team that you should beat them decisively. Boston, a team that no one really expected them to beat them decisively. And then Mates, they had a good series against them, but they trolled the map 4. As we know, Rancor smacked the desk. He was not feeling it. So I'm going to put Miami solidly in B. They have been an amazing team. I'm very high on them, so I have to check my implicit biases at the door and put them in B, just because I did kind of want to put them in A. I like what I've been seeing from them. I feel like they're a really good team. They just had some very close and respectable losses to really good teams, but they looked competitive even when they were losing to teams that most would consider to be better than them. So, the next team that we're going to look at is, of course, the next one in, I guess, placement order, which would be Vancouver, right? No, it was G2. Okay, I saw the wrong helmet. G2 Minnesota. Where's Min? There we go. Okay, so let's look at their performance over the Major 1 quals. Of course, close Game 5 win against C9 because it couldn't have gone any other way against C9, right? The Game 5 guys versus the Game 5 guys had to go 5. Lost to OpTic Texas, not really that surprising, defending world champs. Boston Breach, another close series. I'm also doing a video. I was working on it beforehand. Round 11 and close hard points. So as you guys can see, I'm compiling those in a list. And then I'm going to make a master cut, as they say, of all the closest HP maps. Another one, Riyadh versus G2. So as you guys can see, I'm not going to get into the weeds of all of it, but G2 has had a lot of very close, very respectable series against some of the top teams in the game, which is why, might surprise some of you guys, but I will put them in A. You would have to figure if they get the shooters bounce in some of these series, like the loss to Boston, the loss to G2, the loss to Carolina. I mean, coin flip, let's say 2 of those go a different way. They're in winner's bracket right now, and they have victories over FaZe and Toronto Koi to hang their hats on. And then they would also have a victory potentially over the Carolina Royal Ravens or the Riyadh Falcons, both teams who were competing for the #1 seed last week. So, that's why I'm putting Rokkr in A. I feel like their record is kind of not indicative of how good they are as a team. Similar thing for the next team that we'll be talking about, Toronto Koi. They're currently 3-4. We were all quite high on them considering how they had performed in some of their closer series, right? Against teams like, of course, FaZe Vegas, beating LA Thieves. And then we saw what happened against Carolina. Then we saw what happened against Mates. And then we saw what happened against Minnesota. And now I'm just a little bit less sure of where to place this Toronto Koi team, and I'll explain why. The reason why I'm a little bit unsure of how Koi is going to look for the rest of the season, as well as at Major 1, is because Real and Insight, 2 of the players who you expect to bear the brunt of a lot of the objective work, have just been kind of lackluster, right? Like, Insight's usually the guy you expect to anchor spawns, play kind of a stationary Iron Boot AR role, just sitting in power positions planted, right? But Real, he's supposed to be kind of your entry patrolling guy to support Joe. And Real's just been a little bit mid, I'm not going to lie. You know, I am a big Real supporter. I really liked how transformative he was on that Miami Heretics team last year. You guys know I was a big fan of those guys all the way through. And, you know, I haven't seen anything from Real that really looks reminiscent of how we know Real to play in the CDL. So that's why I have him at B. Insight, it must be said, he's been playing a lot faster this year. He's made adjustments in his play style, but it just feels like he's not the AR to make Toronto Koi a series contender. So, I said all that to say, I'm placing the Toronto Koi in B tier for the moment, just because, I mean, a 3-0 loss to Minnesota, you would have to have them usurp, you know, the Toronto Koi in your personal power rankings after a 3-0 that was this decisive, right? I mean, it was just belt, straight belt. So, also, the Gentlemates loss was kind of telling, right? The S&D, they got dominated. Map 1 Scar, they looked good. Overload, they looked great on, but Gentlemates is also just sus in Overload. And then Colossus, a map which you expect them to really be very, very good on. Insight and Real had a dual stinker. And then, yeah, I mean, in the Game 5, Scar wasn't even close. So, that's why I have them in B tier. You know, if you differ, argue with the comment section. You know, argue with your mama, argue with the wall. That's just my take. The next take is going to be a little bit more nuanced. Honestly, if you look at C9 New York's record, you would think that these guys are hopelessly just without a clue in the CDL. You know, Diogenes of Sinope looking for an honest man type beat. But honestly, if you look at it, they have 5 of 7 of their series that went to Game 5 and they lost the coin toss. You know, one-score games, if you're an NFL fan, are always the thing that we like to mull over and ponder and pontificate about, because what if these Game 5... Well, okay, alright, well, are you guys noticing a trend? Are you guys noticing a trend? Because I'm hashtag noticing that these MFs have never won 4 rounds in a single Game 5 this season. Nah, they're ass. Alright. We're putting them in D tier because you don't win more than 4 rounds in a single Game 5. You're ass, dude. Get out of here. Alright. Next team is the Riyadh Falcons. Riyadh season, baby. This is their year to really, really turn some heads, become the team that we all know that they can be. And, you know, put some B to the CDL's A. You know what I'm saying, guys? So, yeah, Riyadh Falcons, they're 5-2. Just landing the plane here. Every single team in the CDL that is top seeded, made the winners bracket, has at the minimum 4 wins. So, 5 wins is the most that any team has. 2 losses, of course, also is the most any team has. We play 7 series. No one was able to win 6. All right, so just want to set the stage there. So, Riyadh, they looked phenomenal. They have a lot of 3-0s and 3-1s, very decisive respawn wins. You know, their S&Ds looked very, very good, barring their performance against 2 of the best teams in the world, right? Defending world champs, OpTic, when their game knowledge was at its peak, right? OpTic, early in the game, looked to be super far ahead. Then we had about 3 weeks to 4 weeks off, and the game has changed, right? Like I always say on the channel, coming out of the break, you get essentially a brand new Call of Duty. And the same thing happened in the summertime. That's where OpTic benefited, right? What benefited is now what's cutting them. So that's just the nature of how the cookie crumbles, as they say. No TJ Halley, you know? So looking at it, Riyadh, I'm going to put them, they're my first S-tier team. I mean, quite obvious, right? Riyadh they took the #1 seed. They're still, let's look at the standings and see where they sit, right? They're sitting at number 3 on the table. They look phenomenal. 16-12 map count. And then, of course, only teams above them are Gentlemates and FaZe. So, Riyadh, obvious S-tier team, right? Just makes a lot of sense. Okay, back to the schedule. Who's the next team? FaZe Vegas. All right, well, obviously, they're an A-tier team. Yeah, okay. All right, buddy. So, yeah, looking at FaZe Vegas, I mean, there's not really a lot of insight to take from this. I mean, going into the break, they lost to LA Thieves, and then they righted the ship, got all of their wrongs righted, you know, beat the Gentlemates in a Game 5 where they dominated them 6-0. Then they beat the Toronto Koi, waxed that ass, 6-4. 3-0'd OpTic Texas, which was very surprising coming out of the break. We all thought OpTic would just go off without a hitch and continue to be the best team in the world, but FaZe clearly said, hey, we've been practicing too, and, you know, we're not going to let you guys embarrass us again. They beat C9 New York, which you expect, 3-0. I mean, this is one of the most dominant 3-0s we've seen in a long while. Then, surprisingly, they got punched in the mouth by the Minnesota G2 side the next day. Honestly, I think it was just a matchup thing. I don't think they underestimated them coming into this matchup at all. I think G2 is just that good of a team. And I feel like in terms of the way that FaZe has always matched up against any iteration of G2, Rokkr, whatever their name was, it's always just been close, and FaZe has lost a surprising amount when they were the better team. So, not sure what it is with those 2 teams, but it always ends up a certain way. So, that brings me to the team that I really didn't want to talk about. I wanted to buy myself a lot of time to think about where to place OpTic, because I know the pitchforks are coming out right now in the comments. Yeah. I don't know, man. I don't know what to think about OpTic. Like, look at their form, right? You go from 3-0ing Falcons, a top-seeded team in this game, right? The number 3 seed, beating Minnesota G2, a very, very good team at the time, beating Miami Heretics, another team that was emerging at the time as a very serious contender. Then you come out of the break and you immediately get 3-0'd by FaZe. You get absolutely stomped. Barely beat the Vancouver Surge, if we're being honest. I mean, 193-250 in map 1. Not a good look knowing what we know now about Vancouver and how weak they are as a team. LA Thieves absolutely mopped the floor with you. You win 1 map and Mercules has his worst performance of his career thus far. And then to close it out, the Carolina Royal Ravens, Carolina Exceeds, whatever you want to call them, they went out back and in Southern tradition told those boys to get a switch, and they just switched the cheeks. So, man, let's use the standings to guide this a little bit, right? To help land this plane. So OpTic have 4 wins. We're not going to be panicky. We're not going to sit here and, you know, be reductive, call them a bad team, because that's clearly not true. But there is clearly something going on with this team where they are not what they used to be. They've lost 3 of their 4 matches in January, right? So at this point in the game, they've clearly fallen off to a degree. But defending world champs, they could turn it up at any point. I want to put them in B, but that's just too much recency bias because of how strong they looked in the front half of the year, going from an S tier team. I want to put them in B. We'll split the difference and we'll just drop them in A and leave it at that, because obviously it's OpTic. They could turn up any day. Mercules, if he gets back to being Mercules. Shotzi, if he goes from being, you know, the 50th ranked hardpoint KD to anything above fucking 50. OpTic will look great. Hook has looked phenomenal. Dashy's been a little bit inconsistent. He's definitely been one where I'm like, hashtag noticing, you know? So we'll see if Dashy can get right. We'll see if Merc can get right, Shotzzy, and then Hook can keep doing what he's doing. And yeah, we'll see how it goes from there. Speaking of guys where we'll see how it goes from there, we have Nasty and the Boston Breach. I so badly want to put these guys in C, but like, bro, they're not that bad, but they are. But they are. Alright, let's look at the standings again. I think they're 9th? They're 10th. They're 10th. Okay, they're pissed. They're dog pissed. I mean, you're 10th seeded, like, after you made all that stink picking up Nasty, big free agent. You don't move on from Cammy. Keep Purge. I mean, I feel like Boston needs to blow it up. I feel like they need to blow it up. Are they better than Miami or Koi? Hell no. Alright, we'll put them in C. Somebody's got to be in C, right? So we'll put the Boston Breach in C because as it stands, they just can never seem to pull it together when they need to. Oh yeah, they lost to the Vancouver Surge. They're the only team to lose to the Vancouver Surge. They literally let TJ put his balls on their face, bro. Like what? What am I looking at? All right, yeah, no, Boston's cooked. Boston's cooked. All right, yeah, they're going in C tier. They're going in C tier. These brothers need to get it together, or you know, join the Guangzhou Tigers. Ni hao, as Shaq would say. So, yeah, I mean, if Boston doesn't improve, they better start learning Mandarin, buddy, because the Guangzhou Tigers are calling, and their phones don't have Do Not Disturb on, so the call's going through, and probably is going to get picked up. So, speaking of people who picked up the call, let's look at the Carolina Exceeds, the post-Exceed Carolina Royal Ravens, the post-Slasher Royal Ravens, whatever you want to call them. These guys are looking like Naruto post-time skip, just brolic. They lost their first two, and they came into January, and they are just a completely different team. Slasher stepped down over the break, of course, and then these guys, they just turned it up. I mean, they won 5 straight, beating Miami, Minnesota, Toronto, Texas, and LA Thieves. They're the best team in the game. They're the best team in the game. They have not played FaZe, they have not played Mates, they have not played Falcons, but they've beaten every other top-ranked team in the minds of the community thus far. They lost to Falcons, but that was with Slasher when Slasher was just looking like the hash-slinging Slasher after he's revealed to just be that nerdy-ass guy who has the boots that squeak, you know? So, yeah, I mean, Carolina, they look amazing. They look like actual Thanos, or as Miles called them, Thane, you know, the son of Thanos. So, yeah, I mean, they just look good. Put them in S tier. Not a lot of thought. Alright, speaking of not a lot of thought, we got the Vancouver Surge, the TJ Halley boys, the Crumble boys, whatever you want to call them, the Breakers. I mean, these guys, look at their map count, bro. They won 5 maps in total, right? 4 maps in total. Christ. 3-0, 3-0, 3-0, 3-0, 3-0, 3-1, 3-2. All losses except for their lone 3-2 victory over the Boston Breach. So, automatic D tier, worst team in the league, along with Cloud9. So, yeah, not a lot to say there. Next team I believe I saw was Paris Gentlemates. I was kind of quick on that. Let's go back. Yes, Paris Gentlemates, and then the LA Thieves, and then we are out. Okay, obviously, Paris Gentlemates, great team. Beat Vancouver Surge, free. Lost Game 5 to FaZe Vegas. Got absolutely obliterated in the Game 5, which is kind of tough. Then they 3-0'd the LA Thieves going into the break when Kenny was free. Beat Cloud9 New York in the Game 5, which they had no business getting to, if we're being honest. They trolled in the overload, should have closed it out 3-1, but it is what it is. Call of Duty any given Sunday, right? Lost to the Riyadh Falcons. This was the park the bus cheese. I mean, dude's parking the bus, like, what are we, 6? Like, seriously? Like, we're just laying down in spawn, just, you know, dick in the dirt. Like, what are we doing? So, yeah, I mean, they beat Miami, they beat Koi, they beat C9, they beat LA Thieves, played FaZe tight, beat Surge. Only loss was to Falcons and FaZe, who are consequently on the leaderboards, sitting at 2 and 3, right? Mates are number 1 on the leaderboard, so de facto best team in the game, you would have to argue. If we're talking about form, then that's definitely Carolina, but if we're talking about overall standings, it's obviously the mates because they sit atop the leaderboard as number 1. Now, this is going to be the hardest team to place down in the power rankings. Why, you might ask? Because their form has been all over the place. Every player on this team has had a serious dip in form that has made me question how good this team can be at any point. Some days they come out in 3-0 teams. Other days they come out and get 3-2'd by teams they have no business losing to, like the Boston. Well, they didn't lose to the Boston Breach. But teams like, well, I mean, they did have business losing to the Carolina Royal Ravens. Get your words out, Christopher. All right. Anyways, LA Thieves, I mean, they are 4-3. Even with them looking so shaky at times, coming out of the break, they've just looked phenomenal outside of that Koi loss. The Koi loss, you would have to say, is an anomaly because the next week they came back, they got right, and they beat OpTic Texas. So, because of their missteps, I'm going to put them above G2, obviously, right? Relatively speaking, and then above OpTic just because they beat them in the head-to-head, and I feel like OpTic is kind of on a weird downturn, similar to where they were last major one. So, yeah, that's where I'll place LA Thieves. I'm going to say high A, and then of the S tier teams, if we're not ranking everything based on skill, it's kind of a hybrid system, rankings, performances. It's very hard because we have so much parity in this game. The S tier is not super clear, right? Like, anyone from the A tier could arrive in the S tier just based on one good weekend of performance. Similar scenario for the B tier. If Miami catch fire, if Koi put it all together, and Insight is a more consistent contributor all the way through, they could have a run, they could win Major 1 as well. So B could go to S, A could go to S could fall to A, S could also fall to B, very doubtful on falling to B. Falling to A, not that unlikely. Any of these teams could just have a bad weekend, and, you know, that starts a really weird string of unpredictable form for a top team. So, yeah, guys, that's about wrap it up for me for this tier list for all of our 12 teams in the CDL. I also made a tier list ranking all 48 of our CDL players. If you missed that, it's on the channel. I also did a recap of CDL Week 5 from going into Major 1. And I'm also going to be, like I mentioned, uploading compilation videos going over round 11s and close HPs. And then the last thing I have coming is going to be going out before the major, which is the major preview and some play cracked picks. So yeah, guys, hope you have a great morning, noon, or night, like I always say. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share it with someone who you know enjoys Call of Duty. And yeah, hope you guys have a great morning, noon, or like I always say on these videos. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. If you're going to Major 1, be sure to travel safe, bring a shovel, bring a jacket. You know, it's very cold. And yeah, make sure that you guys stay safe, keep grinding, and enjoy all the COD this weekend. If you haven't, join the Discord down below for the COD Stats channel. And another one I will be linking, which is, if you guys want picks, be linking that. So yeah, hope you guys have a great one, like I always say, and I'll catch you on the next one. Once again, this is Chris from FaZe Sports News X Rotation. However the flip, you know me, these interwebs, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace!